first want to say thank you and welcome to everyone for coming. We're very excited to be the very first public announcement of the Anisfield-Wolf Award. So thank you so much for joining us for that. We're also very excited to have Jericho Brown come and speak here at our library. I'm sorry I didn't mention. My name is Bridget Body and I'm the branch manager here. So this is a big deal for me because I've been working on this event for many weeks with the Cleveland Foundation. And it's been a wonderful experience working not just with the library system, but with the foundation to get this event up and running, and to see such a large group of people here to hear Jericho and listen to who wins the award is pretty exciting for all of us. So thank you for coming. A couple things, just housekeeping things for you. For those who don't know, if you need the restroom, just go out in the hall, turn right, and you'll be right there. Also, there are books for sale, and Jericho will be nice enough to sign books after the event. We will have a chance for question and answers, so we'll be bringing the mic around midway through the program. So if you have any questions, just hang on to them until then. All right, so I'm very excited to introduce Jericho Brown.
Hi, how y'all doing? Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Is this thing on? I'm so glad to be back in Cleveland, man. Tell you, I always feel at home. I always feel at home in Cleveland because I know this is a city of survivors. I know everybody out here trying to make it, which is all I'm trying to do every day, all day long. So I appreciate y'all for being the flagship of people trying to make it in this world. Thank God for Cleveland. Thank you so much. I'm going to read a few of my poems to you. Is that okay? And let me tell you what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to sing. I know every once in a while you'll get a poet up there and they'll start singing. That's not going to happen. And it's not going to happen because I want what's best for you. And I'm not going to dance, and I'm not going to be all over this platform they've created here. I'm just going to stand flat on my feet, and I'm going to read you the best representation of my soul that I have in this world, and that is my poems. And I am also going to answer some questions for you once we're done with the reading. So y'all okay with that?
Yes,
all right, well, y'all are my favorite people in the whole wide world. I don't understand. I don't know why I can't just take y'all with me everywhere I go. Can y'all just come take this flight back with me? Where I'm from, we always began with prayer, so I'll start with a poem that is also a prayer. I don't want this to be, there's nothing on this. I keep thinking I'm talking into the air. Did I see Phil Metris out there? Hey, what's up? Y'all got the best poets in the country out here. What's up? Prayer of the backhanded. Not the palm, not the pear tree switch, not the broomstick, nor the closest extension cord, not his braided belt, but God, bless the back of my daddy's hand, which, holding nothing tightly against me, and not wrapped in leather, eliminated the air between itself and my cheek. Make full this dimpled cheek, unworthy of its unfisted print, and forgive my forgetting the love of a hand hungry for reflex, a hand that took no thought of its target, like hail from a blind sky, involuntary, fast but brutal in its bruising. Father, I bear the bridge of what might have been a broken nose. I lift to you what was a busted lip. Bless the boy who believes his best beatings lack intention, the mark of the beast. Bring back to life the son who glories in the sin of immediacy, calling it love. God, save the man whose arm like an angel's invisible wing, may fly backward in fury, whether or not his son stands near. Help me hold in place my blazing jaw as I think to say, excuse me. Labor. I spent what light Saturday sent sweating and learned to cuss, cutting grass for women kind enough to say they couldn't tell the damn difference between their mowed lawns and their vacuumed carpets just before handing over a $5 bill rolled tighter than a joint and asking me in to change a few light bulbs. I called those women old because they wouldn't move out of a chair without my help. They couldn't walk without a hand at the base of their backs. I called them old, and they must have been. They're all dead now, dead and in the earth I once tended. The loneliest people have the earth to love, and not one friend their own age. Only mothers to baby them, and big sisters to boss them around. Women you want to please, and pray for the chance to say please to. I don't do that kind of work anymore. My job is to look at the childhood I hated and say, I once had something to do with my hands. $4 in the morning. My mother grew morning glories that spilled onto the walkway toward her porch because she was a woman with land who showed as much by giving it color. She told me I could have whatever I worked for. That means she was an American. But she'd say it was because she believed in God. I am ashamed of America and confounded by God. I thank God for my citizenship in spite of the timer set on my life to write these words. I love my mother. I love black women who plant flowers as sheepish as their sons. By the time the blooms unfurl themselves for a few hours of light, the women who tend them are already at work. Blue. I'll never know who started the lie that we are lazy, but I'd love to wake that bastard up at 4 in the morning, toss him in a truck, and drive him under God past every bus stop in America to see all those black folk waiting to go work for whatever they want. A house, a boy to keep the lawn cut, some color in the yard. My God, we leave things green. Hero. She never knew one of us from another, so my brothers and I grew up fighting over our mother's mind. Like sun-colored suitors in a Greek myth, we were willing to do evil. We kept chocolate around our mouths. The last of her mother's lot, she cried at funerals, cried when she whipped me. She whipped me daily. I am most interested in people who declare gratitude for their childhood beatings. None of them took what my mother gave, waking us for school with sharp slaps to our bare thighs. That side of the family is darker. I should be grateful, so I will be. No one on earth knows how many abortions happened before a woman risked her freedom by giving that risk a name, by taking it to breast. I don't know why I am alive now, that I still cannot impress the woman who whipped me into being. I turned my mother into a grandmother. She thanks me by kissing my sons. Gratitude is black. Black as a hero returning from war to a country that banked on his death. Thank God It can't get much darker than that. As a human being, there's the happiness you have and the happiness you deserve. They sit apart from each other the way you and your mother sat on opposite ends of the sofa after an ambulance came to take your father away. Some good doctor will stitch him up, and soon an aunt will arrive to drive your mother to the hospital where she will settle next to him forever, as promised. She holds the arm of her seat as if she could fall, as if it is the only sturdy thing. And it is. Since you've done what you always wanted, you fought your father and won, marred him. He'll have a scar he can see, all because of you. And your mother, the only woman you ever cried for, must tend to it as a bride tends to her vows, forsaking all others, no matter how sore the injury. No matter how sore the injury has left you, you sit understanding yourself as a human being, finally free, now that nobody's got to love you. So, thank you. So this next poem is, I think maybe this far north. I'm not sure. Do y'all know this word? This poem is titled, I grew up in Louisiana. I left Louisiana, I lived in Texas for a little while, and then I lived in San Diego. When I was in San Diego, California, I learned that I had an accent. Isn't that something? So then I also learned, people really did not understand what I was saying. I mean, I've lost a lot of my accent just because I lived in San Diego, California, and people needed to understand what I was saying. People didn't understand me. And I found out that there were words I was using all the time that no one else in the country knew, like 4 in the morning. But this next poem is titled after one of those words, and that word is nim. Do y'all know this word, nim? Yeah. Oh, y'all have that here? Some of y'all are looking at me kind of funny. So nim means that person and everyone. Hey, how are you? I see you. Nim is that person and everyone you associate with that person. That's the best definition I can give of nim. Oh, y'all know nim. Y'all know nim. Usually your mama comes in front of. It's like, how is your mama? Nim, right? Okay, good. So y'all do know this word. Okay, good, cool. So I'll just read the poem that's titled after that. And now, they said to say goodnight and not goodbye. Unplugged the TV when it rained. They hid money in mattresses so to sleep on decisions. Some of their children were not their children. Some of their parents had no birth dates. They could sweat a cold out of you. They'd wake without an alarm telling them to. Even the short ones reached certain shelves. Even the skinny cooked animals too quick to catch. And I don't care how ugly one of them arrived. That one got married to somebody fine. They fed families with change and wiped their kitchens clean. Then another century came. People like me forgot their names. I wrote this next poem after finding out about and being confounded by the very long list of people who have supposedly committed suicide while in police custody. They include people like Jesus Huerta in North Carolina, who somehow, after having been patted down while handcuffed, on the walk from the police cruiser to the building where he was supposed to be booked, somehow managed to shoot himself in the back corner of his head. Victor White III in Louisiana, where I'm from, after having been patted down, sitting in the back of a police cruiser while handcuffed, managed to shoot himself in the back. Sandra Bland, who was put in a cell that had video of her up until the point the video goes faulty. And at that moment, when the video cuts off, Sandra Bland managed to hang herself with a trash bag. Bullet points. I will not shoot myself in the head, and I will not shoot myself in the back, and I will not hang myself with a trash bag. And if I do, I promise you, I will not do it in a police car while handcuffed, or in the jail cell of a town I only know the name of, because I have to drive through it to get home. Yes, I may be at risk, but I promise you, I trust the maggots who live beneath the floorboards of my house to do what they must to any carcass, more than I trust an officer of the law of the land to shut my eyes like a man of God might, or to cover me with a sheet so clean my mother could have used it to tuck me in. When I kill me, I will do it the same way most Americans do. I promise you. Cigarette smoke, or a piece of meat on which I choke, or so broke I freeze in one of these winters we keep calling worst. I promise if you hear of me dead anywhere near a cop, then that cop killed me. He took me from us and left my body, which is, no matter what we've been taught, greater than the settlement a city can pay a mother to stop crying, and more beautiful than the new bullet fished from the folds of my brain. So maybe just two more poems, is that okay? Yeah. Y'all are my literal favorite people on the planet. I swear, I promise. I'm suddenly believing in polygamy because I just want to marry all of y'all. You're great. So I'll read two more poems, and then we'll announce the Anisfield-Wolf Book Award winners, which I'm excited to do. The only thing I can say about this next poem is that, when I was a kid, I was a particular kind of nerd. It's easy for me to say that when I was a kid I was a nerd, but then everybody in the room feels like, oh, me too. But I was a particular kind of nerd. Because there are many nerds that are okay because you can create a social world around. Like if you're a comic book nerd, there are other comic book nerds. But comic books are expensive. And if you're a video game, there are other video game nerds. But video games are expensive and always have been. I remember trying to get my mama to buy me video games. She laughed at me. She was like, you have to be joking. Anyway, so I was one of the worst kinds of nerds. Are y'all ready? I was a riddle nerd. I would tell people, I would ask people riddles. I mean, it was worse than knock-knock jokes. I'm telling y'all. So because I loved riddles so much when I was a little kid, when I grew up to be a poet, I decided I wanted to write a poem that was also a riddle. But I kept failing because to write a poem, you can't know where you're going. You can't know the answers. You can't have the resolution. Whereas to write a riddle, you have to know these questions are going to lead to one place. So I figured out if I wanted to write a poem that was also a riddle, I would have to write a poem where I didn't know the answer to the riddle. So I have no idea. I have no idea what the answer to this particular riddle is. So, maybe it'll work out. Y'all can tell me later if you figure it out. Riddle. We do not recognize the body of Emmett Till. We do not know the boy's name nor the sound of his mother wailing. We have never heard a mother wailing. We do not know the history of this nation and ourselves. We do not know the history of ourselves on this planet because we do not have to know what we believe we own. We believe we own your bodies but have no use for your tears. We destroy the body that refuses use. We use maps we did not draw. We see a sea, so cross it. We see a moon, so land there. We love land so long as we can take it. Shh. We can't take that sound. What is a mother wailing? We do not recognize music until we can sell it. We sell what cannot be bought. We buy silence. Let us help you. How much does it cost to hold your breath underwater? Wait. What are we? What? What on earth are we? What? So, stand for 71. Thank you. Thank you. Y'all are wonderful. I'm going to read one last poem. I'm reading mostly from this new book. It just came out 2 days ago. So I'm so glad I get to share this moment with y'all. It's called The Tradition. I love it so much. This book tried to kill me. I'm serious. This book, I was up in the middle. I mean, it would be 4 o'clock in the morning. These poems was chasing me down. So I'm so happy that this exists and I can touch it. And we get along a lot better now. I'm not fighting it. I'm serious. We were fighting, but we like each other now. We're good. This last poem, this book, by the way, I just found out this book is going into a second printing. So that makes me very happy. But that's because of y'all. Y'all bought this book. I appreciate that. This last poem, well, I'll just say, I love poetry. I love poetry more than anything. And I'm glad I found it. And I'm glad it found me. Poetry really, it sounds cliche when people say this, but it's real for me that poem saved my life. And by that, what I mean is, I was in a position where I literally had poems as a distraction from all sorts of other evil I was interested in getting into. Do y'all understand what I'm saying? And I mean, I could tell you what some of those evils are, but y'all would feel like you couldn't go back to church if I were to tell you. Would be like, oh, you would feel dirty all over. So poetry really did save my life, and I'm grateful for it every day. The only thing I can think of that I might love more than poetry is the only thing I love more than poetry is cuddling. So I always wanted to write a poem that was about cuddling. So at the end of my book is a poem about cuddling, and I'm going to read it for you. Stand. Peace on this planet, our guns glowing hot. We lay there together as if we were getting something done. It felt like planting a garden or planning a meal for a people who still need feeding. All that touching or barely touching, not saying much, not adding anything. The cushion of it, the skin and occasional sigh, all seemed like work worth mastering. I'm sure somebody died while we made love. Somebody killed somebody black. I thought then of holding you as a political act. I may as well have held myself. We didn't stand for one thought, didn't do a damn thing. And though you left me, I'm glad we didn't. Thank y'all so much. Oh my God! Y'all are crazy. Y'all are too much. Thank you. You come up now? Q&A. Oh yeah, sure. So if anybody has any questions, I am happy to answer them. You can ask me whatever you want. If you want to ask me about my poems or about poetry in general, or if you just want to ask me how long it took to get my hair done like this. Or Yes, sir.
How do you spell Nome?
I spelled it apostrophe, capital N, apostrophe, E-M. Because, you know, it's a compound contraction coming from and them. But the real problem, I mean, you know, that's still not English. You do know. And I think it's actually, I think even and them is really short for and the rest of them. Yeah. But all of that got cut out. Nobody had time for that. When people have work to do, they don't have time for all these words. Other questions? Yes.
Hi. I just wanted to thank you. And I wanted to ask you, what is your process like for writing, particularly since you and this last book fought each other?
Yeah,
so what is your process?
Yeah. So the process changes depending on how far along I am or how close I am to a book being full and complete and done. The real daily process is that I do one or two things. I either wake up, do some burpees, eat, and then write for 2 hours, or I wake up, eat, and write for 2 hours. And at the end of, and when I say I write for 2 hours, what that really means is I just push words around. I don't feel like I have to make something that is done. Many of the poems from this book come from lines that are as old as lines that I had sitting around in a Microsoft Word document from 2004. So I'll use things that I have that are very old. I'm going through lines and lines and old drafts, and I'm trying to make, I'm cutting and pasting, and I'm trying to make something into something, and sooner or later things hit. But that takes years, so you have to be patient. And you know, I might go back to that if I'm really working, right? So if I get a poem and it seems more whole, then I'm gonna spend more than 2 hours, right? But just to make sure I'm writing every day, that's the time that's dedicated to writing every day, is this 2 hours. I eat, I write for 2 hours, and then by the end of that 2 hours, I know 2 hours have passed because I'm hungry again. And I'm usually hungry every 2 hours. And so then I get up and I eat and I go about the rest of my day, whether it's teaching or whatever meetings I have to do. But depending on where a poem is, it'll get more time, and I'll be up in the middle of the night fighting with it, as I said before. And then sometimes you get these gifts, right? Like the first poem in my second book, The New Testament, is a poem called Colosseum. And I literally, you know, when you get up in the middle of the night to use the restroom, I got up and I had to use the restroom, and I had a line, and you know, when I get a line, I'm very serious about these things. I will pull my car over. You know, and so I grabbed my phone on my way to the restroom to put this line in my phone, in the notes app of my iPhone. And that poem came to me pretty much whole. Like I wrote that poem from the bed to the restroom, back to the bed. Do you know what I mean? But that was a gift, and that gift only really comes if you have a consistency about your reading and your writing. So you have to really be at practice. And one way to think about it is, if we think about the people that we love and how they do what they do, then we have to be at that same level with what we do. And the people we love really are practicing all the time. You know, when we think about people like LeBron James, or we think about people like Beyonce, or we think about people, you know, whenever we think about anybody we think is really good at what they do, you know, when Beyonce gets up in the morning and gets in the shower, she does scales. That's what she's doing. There's no way around that. There's no question. I don't have to sleep next to her to know that. Do you understand what I mean? And so it's just good to have a practice. Thank you.
How old were you when you wrote your first poem?
This is a great question. When I was probably 7 or 8, I was writing poems when I was a little kid. And I know it because my mom would put them on the refrigerator. which would make me write more poems. When I was, writing really had me and my mom getting along really well. I remember the first time my mom, she's an improvisational genius. I was fortunate enough to have a mother who couldn't afford childcare, who understood that on the walk from school to her house, there was a library. And she told us to go to the library instead of going home. And we would go to the library. And my mother didn't have to worry about us tearing the library up when we were kids because we were afraid of our mother. So, and the other thing is I was born at just the right time. I was born right before that moment when the first 2 floors of the library was all computers. The only thing in the library when I went to the library was books. So my sister and I, we just combed through books, and I fell in love with poetry because poems were short. I could do it. I felt accomplished. I was like, oh, that's a page. That's over. That's done. Let's do that again. So I would read another. Oh, my God, I read another poem. Wow, I'm on page 4. Like, seriously, when you're a kid, that feels great. When you're looking at a whole bunch of text on a page, that's another story. But when you got, like, I remember, I was very young when I read Thomas and Beulah by Rita Dove. And I remember reading it and thinking, whoa, that was easy. I got in the car. My mom, she would pick us up. And my mom said, every day she would say, what'd y'all do in the library today? And we would tell her what we did. And she said to me, what did you do in the library today? And I said, I read a book, Mommy. And the face that my mother made. My baby read a book? And y'all have to know a lot about me and my mom to know I had never seen anything like that from that lady. I was like, oh my God, this is the best feeling ever. So I was forever going to the library, and I wouldn't tell her they were books of poetry because I thought I was cheating. Because it was only 1/4 of the page. But I would go to the library and I would hurry up and try to read a book of poetry. I had no idea what they were saying. I would just try to read a book of poetry, so if my mom asked me what I did in the library, I could say I read a book so she could make this face. I hope I answered the question. I kind of got lost. But that's how old I was when I was first writing poems.
Hello.
Hi.
Is your prayer poem in your latest book? The first one you read?
There are some prayer poems in this book. I think of Bullet Points, for instance, as a poem of prayer that I promise you is sort of a pleading. Prayer of the Backhanded is a poem that's in my first book, Please. Yeah.
First of all, I want to tell you the visual imagery in your poetry is absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
When I read the New Testament, it made me love poetry again.
Thank you so
And
much.
it's just beautiful. And one of my favorite poems in there is the 10 Commandments.
Thank you.
And so I just want to know, who are some of your favorite poets? You just mentioned Rita Dove, but who are some of the poets that have influenced you? Because I can just see some homages in there to different poets. So it'd be interesting to know, who are the ones that influence you?
Yeah. I think one of my favorite, one of my favorite poets is Lucille Clifton. She's a poet who's very important in my work, and she really changed my life. I'm glad I got to meet her when she was alive, and to talk to her. I was in various classes that she sat in, so she actually made comments about my poems and would tell me stuff to do, and it just feels, in retrospect, it feels like such a privilege to have known her in that way. I fell in love with her poems. I remember driving back and forth to college, a friend and I would drive and she would read me entire Lucille Clifton books in the 5-hour drive from New Orleans to Shreveport. Langston Hughes was also very important to me when I was growing up. There's a poem that's in his voice in that particular book that you're talking about, Langston's Blues. He's amazing. These short poems by Langston Hughes, y'all need to look at them again, man. They're very good. I mean, I don't even know how he manages it. And I've been I literally got a PhD to figure it out. I'm not exaggerating here. That poem, Island, by Langston Hughes, it's very good. Theme for an English Bee is good today. Suicide's Note is the best 2-line poem. I mean, it whoops Rumi. Like, it's just good. Do y'all know this poem, Suicide's Note? I'll read it. So it's Suicide's Note. The calm, cool face of the river asked me for a kiss. Like he was not playing with y'all. Like he was not like, people try to, I really think people like to underrate Langston Hughes, but Langston Hughes was out here writing. The poet that I think of as a New York school poet that people don't think of in that same way, but who reminds me of them very much, is the poet Nikki Giovanni. She has a poem that I think is really beautiful, which you can find online. It's called When I Die, which is important. When I was very young, when I was going to the library all the time, the librarians were putting in my hands, because they knew I would be really still and stay there because I wanted to finish a book of poetry. So they would give me books of poetry. But they didn't know what they were giving me. They would give me the poets that they had heard of because they thought, oh, this is what you must need, right? So I was reading Sylvia Plath and Anne Sexton and Robert Lowell. Now, this is not what you need a depressed 10-year-old. I mean, Anne Sexton literally has poems titled Wanting to Die. That's not an exaggeration. Do you know what I mean? But I fell in love with Anne Sexton's poetry when I was a kid. And Sylvia Plath, I had no idea what she was talking about, but you know, there's so much color. So I just, those are some of the poets. Louise Glick is good, you know. Terrence Hayes is like my big brother. He's great. He's always been so good. So yeah, I like a lot of poets. It's hard for me to narrow it down, you know. Hopkins is good. He's good. Milton is good. I like Milton. Okay, any other questions?
It's my time.
Is it your time? Oh, maybe one here.
Whose music do you love?
Oh, I love Stevie Wonder. He's good. I like Motown a lot. 60s and 70s Motown. Maybe some early 80s, because DeBarge is still Motown, you know. I like Babyface a lot and all the music that he made. I think he's the best songwriter of all time when it comes down to it. I like Michael Masser a lot, but Babyface turns out to be really good. And Babyface literally wrote all of the #1 hits of the 90s. You know, I'm most interested in listening to Frankie Beverly and Mays. I'm convinced that theirs is the blackest music of all time, right? That somehow or another, Frankie Beverly and Mays have this popularity that exists and is never in any way infiltrated. Do you know what I mean? And that is passed down generation after generation. I don't know how they manage that, but it's literally, like, Mays seems to me inside a family somehow. So I love them. Thank y'all so much. Thank you. They got books out there. If y'all want some, they got some out there.
But before, we have on this early spring night, the library and the words of Jericho Brown. Does anybody need anything else? I'm Karen Long, and I manage the Anisfield-Wolf Book Awards. And we are going to take our tradition and have Jericho tell us the new winners. It exists because a Clevelander named Edith Anisfield-Wolf, a person far ahead of her time, founded this prize in 1935. She believed literature could bring necessary voices to our collective attention. And today it remains the only prize of its kind to look into the face of racism and to think about our diversity. Over the years, the canon has grown to span thinkers and writers and continents and generations with the works of Zora Neale Hurston, Gwendolyn Brooks, Langston Hughes, Maxine Hong Kingston, Gunnar Myrdal, Wole Soyinka, Toni Morrison, Isabel Allende, and Jericho Brown. I think that's enough for me, so will you do the honors?
I will. Should I talk in this one? You still hear me in that one? Thank you so much, Karen. Each year, Anisfield-Wolf presents awards for the best fiction, nonfiction, and poetry released that year. Each year, We also recognize one individual's exceptional contribution throughout their career with a Lifetime Achievement Award. Before I announce the awards, I want to say very quickly, there's a winner of this award who I would like for us to think about as I'm saying these names. And this is the anniversary of his death, and I should say more rightly, the anniversary of his murder. That is Martin Luther King Jr., my frat brother, who won the Anisfield-Wolf Book Award, and who makes me all the more proud that I was once a winner of the Anisfield-Wolf Book Award. And so I'm going to announce these as we think of him and his family and his contribution that has led to rooms like this existing. Isn't this amazing, y'all? Yeah. I'm serious, you know, I have to say this, and Karen said this, there was a time, I mean, in my lifetime, I used to be able to read all of the books of poetry published by black people in a year. I mean, I just could. And I cannot keep up now. Isn't that amazing? The 2019 Anisfield-Wolf Award for Poetry is presented to the current Poet Laureate of the United States of America, Tracy K. Smith. It is for her urgent collection, Wade in the Water, which, in the words of Anisfield-Wolf juror Joyce Carol Oates, explores, or rather eviscerates, our willful self-deceptions about race, history, and the nature of enslavement. Anisfield-Wolf juror Rita Dove ranked Wade in the Water as the best book among hundreds that she read from 2018. Congratulations, Tracy K. Smith. Tracy should be happy. That's good. The 2019 Anisfield-Wolf Award for Fiction is presented to Tommy Orange. For his first novel, There, There. There, There is an incandescent telling of the voices of 12 Native American characters who converge on a fictional powwow at the Oakland Coliseum. Of his book, Orange himself has said, "There's been a lot of reservation literature written. I wanted to have my characters struggle in the way that I struggled, and the way that I see other Native people struggle, with identity and authenticity." Congratulations, Tommy Orange. The 2019 Anisfield-Wolf Award for Nonfiction is presented to Andrew Del Blanco for his devastating pre-Civil War history, The War Before the War, Fugitive Slaves, and the Struggle for America's Soul from the Revolution to the Civil War. Thank y'all. Yeah. Del Blanco spent almost 10 years researching and writing The War Before the War, which focuses on the courageous people who risked their lives to flee bondage, the slave-owning citizens who demanded the return of their property, and the political, legal, and moral furor that lit the fuse to the Civil War. Congratulations to Andrew Del Blanco. Y'all not ready for this. So y'all, and if you know, when is the ceremony?
September 26th.
Y'all might want to get y'all's tickets now. I mean tonight. I would start sleeping outside the theater tonight. I'm serious. When I hear this, y'all really are gonna go get you a tent. I'm serious. Finally, the 2019 Anisfield-Wolf Lifetime Achievement Award is presented to my mother, the poet, playwright, activist, educator, and icon of the Black arts movement, Sonia Sanchez. Sanchez has spent most of her 84 years calling all types of people toward freedom and dignity with her pen and her voice. She is celebrated for elevating the performative aspect of language, its musicality and repetition, and for her storyteller's electric rapport with audiences. We are honored to have the opportunity to recognize her impact on the 20th century. Congratulations to Sonia Sanchez. Isn't that great? It is my pleasure to welcome these 4 integral artists into the Anisfield-Wolf canon. Congratulations once again to Tracy K. Smith, Tommy Orange, Andrew Del Blanco, and Sonia Sanchez.